Hello, welcome to Listening to the Wind, the IWSA's regular interview series. And I'm your host, Gavin Allwright, Secretary General of the International Leadership Association. And today I'm sitting with Ted Shergalis. Hi, Ted.
Hello.
Hi. I'm just going to give a little introduction. So Ted is the Magnuss co-founder and COO. He's a technology entrepreneur who draws on deep expertise in early stage, high growth business operations. At Magnuss, he's responsible for operations, customer engagement, software development, analytics, patent strategy, marketing, and media. Busy man. He started his career at Columbus Chartering, a shipping logistics spin-off of Sealand, and then worked in investment banking at Morgan Stanley. In 20 years, he's built and sold profitable technology companies. And I think most of our audience will probably know a little bit about Magnuss, but maybe not that much. So really looking forward to hearing from you, Ted, and hearing what you've got to say about the technology and how that's developing.
Great. Thank you, Gavin. And thanks again for inviting me on to talk with you today. It's an exciting time right now in kind of the wind propulsion space and broadly in the decarb space for maritime. So I think our conversation is very timely. And as you and I know, we've known each other since 2016. That fateful meetup in Hamburg at SMM. So it's been great to see the growth of IWSA, the members that you've brought in, and really the support you've given Magnuss and our team and our effort broadly on wind assist. So, Magnuss is a technology company and a project developer of wind assist propulsion systems for the global shipping fleet. Our aim is to deliver all types of designs for vessels across shipping categories. Type sail is called the Magnuss Voss. So that's what you'll be seeing and hearing about today. The Voss stands for Vertically Variable Ocean Sail System. And what you'll see is the vertically variable is all about its retractability. It's a patented design, it's class approved, and it was really designed based on direction that we got directly from ship owners to address their needs for retrofit wind assist propulsion. What I was hoping to do is show a short video, a picture's worth 1,000 words, and give you guys a look at the Magnuss Voss in action. So as I said, the Magnuss Voss is the vertically variable ocean sail system. And it's a high-tech sail based on the Magnuss effect. Wind passes over the spinning cylinder and it creates a high and low pressure differential and pushes the vessel forward. It's essentially zero carbon propulsion by harnessing the wind. What's key is, as you can see, this vessel is moving into port and the Voss are retracting into the silo that's placed between the transverse bulkhead of this vessel. As she moves in, the Voss are securely out of the way, so there's no impediment to shore operations, either loading or unloading. This is critical because when we talk to ship owners, they're excited about the opportunity of reducing their fuel needs and emissions with wind assist propulsion, but more importantly, they're concerned about how their vessel trades and whether or not she'll be able to go into ports and operate unimpeded. With the Magnuss Voss, that is the case. When the devices are retracted, you see the vessel operates exactly as she would without any wind assist. As the vessel pulls out, you see when the time is right, the units deploy from, again, below deck, and once all of the units are deployed, they start rotating and capturing the wind. Critical to this as well is this retractability allows us to put the greatest amount of sail area on a vessel. In this case, we have 6 sail units on a Capesize, likely 5 or 4 units, Kamsarmax 4 units. This zero carbon propulsion is what we've been focused on in the conversations we're having with ship owners. They're very excited about, the potential of wind assist on their vessels. Critical to Magnuss as well, beyond just the hardware system that we've developed, is the software system and the analytics that we've designed around our technology. Ship owners want to know, on our routes, in our winds, both historically and going forward on a predictive basis, what's the potential savings on fuel and emissions? Done quite a bit of work with LR and had them review our analytic model for savings and thrust produced by the Magnuss Voss, and they published a report that people can request, and we'll send it out. And I just wanted to read a short snippet of that, the conclusions of the study. For this study, Magnuss calculated the savings as a function of the modeled vessel and the power generated by the Voss. Based on the data derived from the Magnuss model, Lloyd's Register verifies that the Magnuss model accounts for relevant physical effects, including wind shears, resistance due to side forces, rotor power usage, power savings, and optimized Voss rotation to determine the effective power produced. Lloyd's Register verifies the Magnuss model accurately captures the savings delivered by the Voss when deployed. So that's a great attestation. And again, both owners and charterers have asked about the accuracy of the model. And so we got a third party. And I think also beyond just the hardware, the Magnuss Voss equipment that we install, there's also a software system that automates the use of the Voss, as well as captures the relevant wind, sea state, ship speed, ship direction, to then optimize the use of the Voss on route. And as you know, owners have moved beyond just sort of a very simple one-day or midday report, single reporting paradigm, to something that's more inclusive of robust analytics that allow them to capture system data, engine data, fuel flow data, and all of that gets incorporated in the work that we're doing as well. We're really looking, our target market is the largest vessels that are burning the most fuel, that have the greatest amount of emissions. That's where we believe we can have the biggest impact. And that's, again, our initial target market. The blue ocean vessels that, really can't be electrified. There aren't other solutions currently in the market that can provide and deliver what wind assist can, and can't deliver what Magnuss can with our retractable design. We're really focused on kind of joint industry collaboration. We're one of the founding members of the IWSA, and the work that you've done bringing people together, we think is critical to making making sure that the tide rises for everyone. The more deployments we have, the more case studies that are out there, the more comfortable owners are about deploying the technology. The other thing is, with our project approach, we're also looking at innovative financing models such that ship owners don't necessarily need to come out of pocket on a CapEx basis to deploy new technologies. We have a nice way of looking at and breaking down what is traditionally the landlord-tenant problem, where a ship owner, if they charter out their vessel, isn't the fuel payer, and therefore doesn't necessarily benefit from the savings that might be generated from a wind assist propulsion system like the Magnuss Voss. So those conversations have progressed very well. My co-founder, James Rhodes, is a carbon finance expert, built a business with GE and AES, a power company, to do just this, to invest in and deploy capital in both the efficiency and carbon markets. And we're bringing a lot of that expertise to bear in the shipping space. Also, I'd just like to mention, we are a US-based company. I'm sitting in London, and we have sort of a global reach with partners in Asia on the fabrication and build side, shipyard side. So really looking globally, not just focused in the US.
No, it sounds like things are really coming together at the moment. I think, you know, at what I would say is probably the perfect timing. Thank you for taking us through the process. You mentioned a couple of things there that I think are really important. One of the things that you mentioned was around tailoring the design to ship owners' needs and requirements. And I was just wondering if you could unpack that a little bit more. You know, how does that process work?
Great, yeah. I mean, so in my experience, and as you mentioned in my bio, you know, I've started a number of companies, and critical to what I've always found a successful market entry is knowing the customer. What are their needs? Making sure you get there. In early days, James and I were able to meet with ship owners, kind of jump in a subway, go up and down Park Avenue, and meet all of the owners that have headquarters there, and say, you know, what is preventing you from benefiting from a technology that could save you 10, 20, 30, 40%? Like what is this issue? And particularly when we presented out and showed that, you know, wind assist is a proven technology. Around Flettner rotors, for example, as you know, it's a 100-year-old technology. And so we know the physics works, and we know that, you know, the equipment can be built and installed. You know, in a word, it's retractability. They said, if you impede port operations, if you change the way this vessel can trade, you've done something that's, you know, outweighs all the potential benefits of the savings, both in fuel and emissions. So it's got to get out of the way. Traditional fixed rotors, fixed sails, fixed mast can't go on the vessel. So that started our design spiral. That's where we worked and had the innovation, the idea, you know, the light bulb moment of saying, okay, it's got to be retractable. It has to, you know, get out of way. The benefits there, in addition to just port operations, is we know that, you know, vessels need to go port to port and travel on routes that are not always perfect for wind. They may have to go into a headwind. That's the other critical, you know, benefit of a retractable system, is you can get it out of the way. And ship owners love that. They say, okay, I totally understand. Sometimes I'm going to have to go into a channel. I'm going to have to go into this strait. And I just want to make sure that when I've installed something, it's not going to cost me something extra, which again is an issue with all fixed systems.
Yeah, no, it's interesting, and you know, we've seen tilted Flettner rotors. We've seen Flettner rotors that are able to move on rail systems, but you've gone for the, you know, the sort of telescopic retraction of the rotor. And I was just going to ask you on a technical front, you know, did that pose, or did that pose any development challenges? You know, where you're making a system that has segments. So I'm assuming that there were early prototypes that you've got to work through a few issues. But I was just wondering if you could let us know a little bit more about how that works. How did the design sort of mature and become what it is today? Great.
Yeah, it you know, it's akin to Dyson sitting in his, you know, back shed in his garden and making thousands of Hoovers. It was definitely a design iteration, and we had looked at, you know, tiltable on deck designs, and we dismissed them in that there are concerns of green water, the vessel, you know, being in a position where there's potential damage to equipment on deck, either through the grab cranes or just weather events. There's a weathering of the material such that the devices won't necessarily have a useful life as long as a device that can be stowed away. So all of those concerns we thought through, and again, worked very collaboratively with both ship owners and shipyards to say, what is kind of the ideal solution? What are we working towards? One of the keys was, yes, we want it off the deck. We want to be able to dog it down. As you said, to make it fit within the tank top to the deck, it does come in two pieces, so it is segmented. How those two pieces work together again is the patented concept and how they're delivered. But that really was a cycle of figuring out how do we mechanically make it work, how do we make it robust and fail safe, how do we make sure that it can be class approved, which it is. And that was bringing a lot of elements for the first time. I mean, our device was approved 2013. It was the first approved Flettner rotor system by LR. Was taking disparate components of the class rules for CSR as well as lifting devices, and making, the common structural rules as well as lifting devices, making sure those two things come together with what at the time was a sort of a 1 or 2 page wind assist propulsion guidance note. We were the ones sort of working collaboratively with class to say, okay, gone are the days of, a mast, a wooden mast on a wooden ship. We have to think more broadly. And then that all came together with this concept of a 2-piece design that does retract into deck. The other benefit as well is it allows us to place the unit center line. So a lot of the things and the analysis we did with LR is with wind assist, the better you can keep the center of effort and center of gravity moving, the less corrective rudder angle that you have. The better you can actually have the vessel operate, which again is one hallmarks when we talk to the technical teams and the captains that are looking at solutions. They want to be able to kind of operate the vessel the way they have, and they don't want it to have to crab or move out of position or have excess roll or leaf force. So all of those went in, and very happy with
sort of that sort of minimal impact, minimal how can I say, engagement with the technology from the crew and the captain's point of view, I'm sure. Exactly. But it's quite interesting, and we're going to move away from that technical side of things a bit, because now the market I think 2014 to about 2017 was an incredibly difficult market period for any technology coming into the industry, with low fuel prices, incredibly low fuel prices, etc. But I think now we've talked about this a little bit before, but now I think the market is starting. It's almost the market is catching up with the technology. Is saying, okay, well, we need to make some changes. There are other drivers out there. And they're now looking at the technologies, and obviously they're discovering that the technology has moved quite a lot in the last few years. And I was just wondering, which of the markets you showed the video with the bulker segment, and I can appreciate quite a lot of deck space or area to put in a wind propulsion system. But what are the markets that you're mainly focusing on or seeing the greatest opportunities?
Great, and I'll hit that, but I just want to address that first kind of comment you said about the market catching up, and I totally agree. There were a number of years there with the low fuel price, which was a driver, as well as there wasn't regulatory clarity. No one really knew kind of where the market was going to shake out. This was in terms of kind of even globally with carbon markets, carbon pricing, emissions, where were we going to end up? And thankfully, we're ending up with a regime that's, cares about it. The ESG concerns broadly, every holder are now front and center. So a lot of those concerns have caught up. The other thing is, I truly do feel for a ship owner that had to put in a ballast water treatment system, had to think about making a scrubber decision, so it's not as if ship owners weren't investing in fleets and in equipment. It was just what could they do at the time. So
Yeah, and I was just going to say, actually, I'd agree, with the ballast water system, which is pretty much dead money as well. It's an expenditure, and that's it.
Right.
So yeah, no, absolutely.
And but what I think is nice, and the silver lining is they, the ship owners have had to do retrofits, so they are comfortable bringing vessels into a 5-year refit and doing work, or pulling them out of service for a couple of weeks to do work because they see the benefit, right? They're able to capture the spread. They're able to see how the vessel trades differently with new technologies. And that is a lot of things that we're hearing from the customers that we're talking to. Yes, okay, we've seen the benefit. Okay, can you, one, address these technical things? And okay, where the benefit's going to be driven. Maybe final point, but maybe not final point, is the digitization phase as well. So, we did an early integration with the Storm Geo Bon Voyage system. We wrote code in my past software businesses that have built and sold, critical to do partnerships with people that have systems that you can, add value to. And one of those companies was Storm Geo, and we were able to put our code within their weather routing system. And it was amazing to be able to see, okay, you have an 8 or a 16-day forecast, you have some historical data, how are we able to present that out? But, not everybody was using a weather routing system. They were, still getting telexes and faxes about routes and kind of, finger in the air. So as the digitization has become more sophisticated, their familiarity with data, their ability to incorporate sensors, fuel flow sensors, other data on board, is also another critical component of that.
Yeah, I would certainly agree, and I think that entire alignment of things like even weather forecasting has in the last decade has become incredibly sophisticated and huge improvements, materials, etc.
Yeah, and AIS data and a lot of the small sat companies that have constellations now that are providing global coverage both of weather and ship data. I mean, all of these confluences are all of these events are coming together, which is great. I also think here's another sort of big trend that early days, and I'm sure you remember meeting with the team from MAN, they were MAN Diesel, now there's MAN, would come over to our booth at SMM and talk to the wind assist companies. And one of the big drivers was, well, what's going to happen to the main engine and our main propulsion when you are now providing a significant amount, not just 1% savings like a paint or something, but a significant amount of propulsion reduction. And it's been amazing to see, MAN and Wärtsilä and others get comfortable over the last 5 years where there was slow steaming. How do we run these power plants at lower, powers, but still keep the efficiency and not hurt the engine? So that was another whole development that just needed to occur and is supporting now the deployment, or will allow for the deployment of wind assist at scale.
Yeah, and having those varied power curves being available and pretty much switching between them and optimizing those engines. Absolutely. Yeah.
Right. So with all that preamble, now to your question on where we're focused.
To the thing that I really want to know.
Well, as we're really trying to have the biggest impact. There have been lots and lots of small little deployments, a rotor on a ferry or something moving around that doesn't save anything. And, James and I and kind of our team and our investors are all about, Magnuss trying to make our dent in the universe. Like, where can we actually have the impact? And the largest blue ocean going vessels are the ones that we're looking at. And, preferably in a trade that, maybe isn't a hydrocarbon, right? So there's always this tension of wind assist on oil tankers. Like, okay, where are we there? But we know that the bulk markets are required for the global economy. It's just the distribution of goods and people is that they're separated by water. And to fuel an economy and raise the quality of life for people and really deliver on broadly the SDGs, the other SDGs about lifting people out of poverty and all of these are about creating an economic system that works, and the bulk commodities are part of that. And so we're really focused initially on that target segment. So the largest bulk carriers in the market. And they have the greatest days at sea, they have the highest fuel burn, they have the greatest emissions profile, and there's plenty of space for us to deliver our technology kind of on the biggest wind assist installation possible.
Yeah, no, makes a lot of sense. And we've been talking about some of the drivers and the momentum, and of course we want to continue talking about that, because that's the exciting stuff, and really it is almost a perfect storm coming together. However, we haven't yet seen deployment at scale, and I think you alluded to that in your last statement. What's holding back? What's holding the industry back? I think we both agree it's an inherently conservative industry, and not in a bad way, but in a we're talking some of the largest machines ever produced by humans that are out at sea for huge periods of time. They need to be safe, they need to be robust. But what's holding the market back at the moment?
Yeah, so genuinely, particularly in the bulk market, not having a device that gets out of the way, not having a system that seamlessly can be removed and allow that vessel to operate and trade the way she was designed, has been a huge impediment. It's not technology or physics in the sense of appreciating whether or not it will produce thrust and have these savings, but really at a core technical level, it needs to get out of the way. So I think that's first and foremost. You can't overstate the benefit of retractability. Around that are the constellation of factors, which include, as we said, other priorities prior to this point in history. And now at this point, there are a set of technologies like paints and muse ducts and things kind of below the water, which are sort of low hanging, that ship owners are executing.
Indeed.
The second sort of big, or the two other big ones I would say are, there is a focus on future fuels. And while that's an impediment for wind, just in that there's just energy and dollars going towards it, which is important. The industry needs to move away from a bridge fuel concept, which is still not very emissions friendly and climate friendly, like an LNG or something, which is a bridge fuel, and really come to something that is a true, call it blue-green fuel, be it biofuels or ammonia or methanol, something that allows sort of an always-on propulsion. I say it's dual in the sense that any of those fuels are going to be more expensive. Any new ship that is designed to use those fuels would love to have a lower power requirement if they could, and wind assist provides that, right? So think of that ship that will take advantage of those fuels in 10 years' time, that are paying more for fuel. They will like to use less of it, even if it is a carbon-free fuel. So
I like what you did there. You took the barrier and turned it into a positive. I like that. There's a salesman at work.
Yeah, and then third, the big pillar for us as well is finance. Being able to move a CapEx item into an OpEx item is powerful. Like it's just it makes the decision easier, because you're not competing against all of the other internal CapEx. Okay, what other plant equipment do we need to invest in? What other resources do we need to allocate? Okay, how much am I going to tie up my balance sheet? What's happening? Moving it to an OpEx expense where there's really a share, both in terms of the benefit as well as the risk. There's a risk share that you have. I think is the other thing that's been holding us back. But we're going to see a sea change there.
Yeah, no, and I think that in a sense that can be the game changer. Is what if we get that finance model right, and as you say, I mean, moving it almost into a service agreement as opposed to a heavy piece of technology agreement, and you're almost having ship owners to have to find reasons not to do it as opposed to find reasons to do it.
Definitely. And that's really, I'd like to say, to all the IWSA members and other stakeholders, I mean, our goal is to be a capital provider. Like, we're going to be a partner of choice. We want to work with people that are across the technology spectrum, other wind assist, other digitalization solutions, paint, because we agree with you that you need to be able to unlock that value to then get scale. And only at scale can the shipping industry really deliver on what it needs to deliver, which is a reduction which as a couple 2, 3, 4% of global carbon emissions, that's what we're trying to attack.
Yeah, absolutely. And when we talk about that scale, that's when the real costs start to drop. That's the learning curve. That's the where materials are dropping in cost, the economies of scale, etc. And I was just wondering, you mentioned about the fuel systems and developments, the trends that you're seeing starting to happen within wind propulsion. That you talked about being a partner, being an agent in a sense. I'm already seeing some developments here. We're seeing tie-ups with larger companies, takeovers. We're seeing companies moving production lines to lower cost areas or closer to shipyards. Which of those trends are you seeing developing or having the most potential for development and for lifting the sector up outside of the finance side of things?
Yeah, I think, early days, we chose through some very good partners to go to the Far East on production. So didn't, stay in, some of the Scandinavian companies and, stayed and did development and are now doing that technology transfer and manufacturing transfer. We've sort of always based our fabrication, build and development in the Far East. Specifically, we have a couple of partners in the Philippines, and we've now broadened out with a couple of partners in China. It's critical. The scale, the infrastructure, the development is just at a point where you have to go there again to move beyond what is, to date been a lot of not science experiments, but just one-offs that are executing. So to be able to get into proper production. The other thing is, people often ask, well, is this just a new ship delivery? And the idea is, well, there's so much existing tonnage. There's hundreds of millions, billions of dollars of tonnage that, in one sort of alternative future, just basically slows down to death, right? The IMO puts these constraints and they just say, okay, the way we're going to deal with this overhang of tonnage that exists is just have you guys slow down till you can't move anything. Yeah. And for us, that doesn't seem to be the right solution. The idea is we can hit those targets. We have the data, we've shown the analytics. There's others doing this. We now have the tools to sort of make the digital twin and show you, look, we can keep these vessels in line with the targets and also operate and deliver value, while at the same time move to kind of new ship designs that actually incorporate these technologies from day one. And I think it's that approach. But Gavin, it really is about, and it's why it's taken, you and I, the time it has to address this problem, in that you really have to put a lot of pieces in place to make it work. You have to get the shipyard comfortable with a retrofit, that the vessel is going to come in and you're going to do it. You have to get the owner comfortable with how the vessel is going to operate. You need to get the end charterer comfortable that there's going to be delivery there. I mean, and we haven't even really talked about the carbon markets, which is another aspect that, you know, I don't think anybody really has it in any of their financial models or projections. They're just saying, look, there is benefit, but that is coming to the fore and will be a real driver for uptake on owners and a real value driver. So,
no, I think absolutely, and I think the mosaic behind me is and you're part of that actually at the top there, but it really has been putting a huge number of pieces together, and I think, but what you just said there is a pretty powerful message as well, is that, you know, or when you have a business or a business model that you can turn around, or you can say you can maintain a good portion of the business model that you use today and be compliant with all of this regulation and make money. And frankly, no shipping company is a charity. They need to make money. They're there to make money, and they're going to struggle. It's a tough framework going forward. So I think that's a really powerful message, and they align with all of the ESG aspects as well. So I think that's really powerful. On a final point, then, you know, you mentioned about the carbon markets, and you've got the voluntary carbon market, and you've got the sort of national or the international carbon markets like the ETS, etc. I've literally just seen in the news this morning, or this afternoon, sorry, that the EU Parliament has delayed the incorporation of maritime into the ETS, so they're going to have to go back and look at this. How significant will that be in the short term? I think in the long term, everybody agrees that this is going to be critical to moving shipping and the rest of the economy. In the short term, do you think that this will companies start really incorporating this into their business models?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I hadn't seen that news yet, so that's good to know. But
you heard it here first.
There you go. Look, the carbon markets, sort of, there are many dimensions of them. So they're not one thing. What has gotten a lot of or most of the investment to date is things that they call sort of the natural solution. So planting trees and agriculture and waste. We've yet to really see true technologies come in and at scale be able to attack those markets. But it has to, because if you look at the number of corporations that have kind of put a stake in the ground and saying we are going to get to net neutral, and particularly large industry, which shipping is part of, and transportation, obviously, which shipping is part of, there are companies that cannot get to their targets without engaging in those carbon markets. So that will drive the price, you'll get it. When you think about short-term value as opposed to long-term, as you know, if we save a ton of bunkers, we save roughly 3.1 tons of carbon. Today's carbon, voluntary carbon markets are, depending on what you look at, say $10 or $12 US dollars per credit. So that's another 30, 36 bucks, depending on where you are in terms of the efficiency and savings. However, if you look at the predictions from some of the large trading houses, so Trafigura did a report and others, they're saying that the carbon levy to get to parity with future fuels, so trying to have an apples to apples with what we would need to pay today to be able to say we can actually have a carbon free or a zero carbon fuel, you're looking at $150 to $200. And now all of a sudden you have an additional $600 of value that can be put across the different stakeholders to drive innovation. So you know, I think even in the short term, the carbon conversation is, you know, the charterers that we're talking to, the owners that we're talking to are setting up carbon trading desks.
Right.
They're thinking about how they're getting in the market. And from the board down, they're saying, we've got aggressive targets. So how do you engage in these markets? And when projects like installing the Magnuss Voss on a ship can generate close to somewhere between, call it 7 and 10,000 tons of credits a year, that's a meaningful impact that, you know, this line of business within a larger industrial can go and say, yes, we're having an impact.
And that I think speaks very much to the experience that I've had with, and you know, I don't delve into the finance stuff too deeply, but having credits that are available at scale, they're just not enough of those in the market. So there's actually money chasing too few scaled opportunities. So I think,
and not in our market, right? So even if they do additional forestry projects or other reductions, carbon sequestration in oil and gas, it's not directly affecting Maersk or Shell or Trafigura. Or,
it's not creating that positive cycle, as it were.
Exactly. So now if we can start delivering credits in our market, and what's great is, you know, we did a lot of work with the SSI, which is the Sustainable Shipping Initiative. They did a project with a number of Greek owners, first with AkzoNobel to get the paints approved. And now there is a multi-technology methodology through the gold standard, one of these carbon credit accreditation agencies. So
that kind of standardized approach to applying the credits to
shipping,
to X, to whatever that technology is coming into shipping. Yeah.
So,
and I think that's important. Yeah,
definitely having that methodology, having, you know, credits already issued, say in the paints example, and then having the market actually come and say, yes, this is a need. There's an overhang. All of those are driving.
I think, you know, we've got a rainbow. We've got a rainbow of activity going on, and I think, you know, certainly things are looking rosy. But I'm going to take it a little bit away from what we've been talking about, and I'm going to come and hit you with some quick fire questions. So some of these are personal, some of these are business related. How did you get into this field? Because I'm looking at your resume there. You were in chartering, but you're also in finance. How did you get into wind propulsion?
Yes. So as my bio says, my first job was in a shipping business. I grew up in Connecticut in the United States, and that area had a lot of shipping related businesses. And in the 80s, a lot of Europeans moved over, settled in the New York area, moved to Connecticut, and it was just a first job. And we have a very active, the Connecticut Maritime Association. You know, I got an internship through them and all of this. So I've always had this love. And then James and I worked in finance together. My partner, the CEO, co-founder of Magnuss, we worked together at Morgan Stanley. And when he left and said, look, I want to put my stamp in the world on the, he hung that shingle. He and I got together and said, this is amazing. I love starting businesses. I love technology. You've just built this great, you know, carbon business. And sort of blue sky, we said, where can we have the biggest impact? And he had been looking at a bunch of different research from McKinsey at the time. And they said, look, the built environment is the low hanging fruit. The next biggest one is transportation. He and I both love to sail. He and I, you know, just got into it. And literally from that inception, we said, okay, let's look at this opportunity.
So you're blaming James.
Yes, exactly. He's my partner in crime.
Yeah, well, you're certainly on a voyage, you know, and I think we all have been there. Okay, the next steps. What happens next in that voyage, in that Magnuss Voss voyage? What happens next?
Great. So it's really about finalizing the partners in our joint industry partnership. And this includes, again, we're in active discussions with a number of ship owners, charterers, financiers. So those all coming together and gelling with our, call it first deployment, but really with the eye to building a platform for a larger set of deployments. So
Gotcha.
that is the next, the immediate next step is just to gel that. And I just want to announce, we do have a crowdfunding campaign that we put out there really just to get the story out, kind of promote Wind Assist, promote what we're doing with the IWSA and others, and really let, so many people that we talk to in our personal lives, you go to a cocktail party or whatever, and what are you working on? They're fascinated. So we said we should give people an opportunity to get on board and join, sort of join the adventure with us.
That's great.
But that's just a sort of something that we're doing really to support the effort, which is this joint industry project.
So if viewers wanted to get involved with that, they could go to your website and there'll be a link there that they can. So exactly. Magnuss.com.
Magnuss.com. 2 S's.
There you
go. S is for savings.
Brilliant. Are you hiring at the moment?
We're always looking for candidates. We have an amazing team currently in the engineering side, as well as analytics, but always looking to bring people on board. And also overseas manufacturing. We're always looking at partners. We have a great PMC and team there. But if there are candidates and people that are looking, yes, we're always looking for great talent.
Fantastic. I'm sure that'll be well received. And on a question, we talked about carbon. Carbon footprint. I ask all of the interviewees. Carbon, the assessment of the carbon footprint of your system. I'm sure this comes up in discussions with your customers, with the ESG being so important. Have you done that, or are you working on the carbon footprint?
I knew the question was coming because I've watched all the interviews, but we haven't taken at this point a full carbon audit. What I will say is we are looking at our providers, both on all of their certifications and approvals, both in their expertise, to also come back and say, look, this is going to be a concern for us, and we want to deliver out on our own sort of kind of net neutral positioning. And so we haven't done it to date, but it will likely, as we grow and extend, it will be an important metric for us.
Yeah, and I think that's the important part of it, is that materials are changing as well. Materials are improving, suppliers are improving. So that's a journey. Okay, just a couple of other questions. What is the most difficult question that you get asked? I know I ask you a few difficult ones once in a while, but what's the most difficult question? What's your answer to it?
Yeah, I think the most difficult question is sort of why now, which implied is, why not yet? So,
yeah. And
I think, when you're innovating and you're building and you're attempting to bring something to market, that's always the biggest challenge, is how do you time up your delivery? And it's funny because it's often people, when you have a successful exit and you sell the business and everyone says, oh, it's great, it all worked out. And you say, yeah, well, I'm a 14-year overnight success. And so you have to do all that work to make sure the design is right, and patent the technology and get it approved and have the partnerships and help and support industry groups, and go to the IMO when Gavin asks you to go and sit on delegations. So I think it's really sort of the why now question. And I think our whole conversation has really set up both all of the things, all the wind that's at our backs, and some of the resistance that we're still feeling, because we still have to knock down some of the issues on finance and delivery and scale. But I'm very sort of hopeful, and all the signs are pointing that we're going to be able to address those.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And okay, the last question. I'm going to let, if you could have met, or if you could meet Ted 14 years ago and tell him one thing, don't do this or do this. And I don't mean that in a personal way, very much in a business wind propulsion way. What advice would you give yourself starting up or starting out?
Yeah, I think, it's the time it takes to deliver. Again, that why now question, it has always been in the front of our minds, and we think about it. So I can't say that it would be a new insight. It would just be to reiterate to my former self to say, look, building businesses takes time. These are the important questions. And, you won't allow me to bring back the knowledge that bunkers are now over $1,000 a ton, right? So it's not like I needed to know or wanted to know something that was unknowable. It's just to say, you're working on an area that's really important, and you're going to find people along the journey, like Gavin and others, that will be amazing partners, and just continue to support one another, move forward, because this work needs to be done. Right? We are executing and delivering on something that, for a lot of people, shipping is out of sight and out of mind. They don't appreciate kind of where the goods come from, what happens, what is, particularly in raw commodities, how did the steel and the building that, I go to every day and go to work, how did that get there? Well, it had to come from someplace.
Well, my kids are now so used to ordering things online, they don't even know where it comes from, as in a shop.
Right. It comes from the cloud.
It comes from the cloud, absolutely.
So yeah, that would, I think, to my former self, is just, appreciate the journey and the people and the industry really will make it to this point where we are. And I would just, a point on that is with COVID and a lot of the challenges that we've had in the last couple of years, I really feel the industry could have gone one of two ways. They could have retreated and said, it's not important, and we have to worry just about the bottom line, and we're not thinking about any of the concerns about emissions or fuel reductions and emissions reductions, and could have kind of turtled in and gotten small. And that's not been the experience.
No, I think that's a really, really good point. I mean, the tsunami of COVID and all of the subsequent issues as well. There would be a case to turn around and say, look, we can't carry on down this road, and that's certainly not the case. So yeah, looking to the horizon. Ted, I'm going to say thank you just very quickly, but I'm going to hand it over to you just for a 1-minute summation of what the audience could take away. A ship owner watching, or a financier watching, or another OEM watching. That a 1-minute sort of takeaway about Magnuss and about what the future holds for you guys.
Great, thank you. So I would just like to say, Magnuss, as both a technology company and a project developer, wants to engage all stakeholders in the space. And so we welcome the conversations with ship owners, charterers, shipyards, other participants in the space to talk about how do we address the open concerns and issues. From the technology side, I would say there are concerns about wind assist and retrofit, but I think those have been addressed demonstrably, and just asking, the question and reaching out, love to be able to deliver that. Also on the analytics side, please feel free to reach out, because we do have now this published report with LR and others that is cross-checked by third-party data that's happening at, say, WISP-2 and the Marin work. So there is a lot of work that's been done that has set the foundation to now move forward. And I would just ask, for people to take a look, to reach out and engage, because we're in the space and we're going to be here for a while, and we're really excited about the next stage.
Fantastic. Well, I wouldn't be able to finish it any better than that. Collaboration, cooperation, working together, moving the sector forward. Fantastic. Ted, really appreciate you joining us and giving your insights into not just your company, but the wider issues in shipping. Really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thanks for the time, Gavin.
And I'd like to thank everybody for joining us on this edition of Listening to the Wind. And of course, if you have follow-up questions or you'd like to engage with some of that collaboration with Magnuss, I'm sure that Ted will be more than happy to receive your emails or phone calls. And of course, if you've got any follow-up questions or you want more information about wind propulsion in general, then I'm always happy to deliver that. Or you can visit our website and find out all the exciting things that are happening in the sector. So on that note, thank you, Ted. Really appreciate it. Please say thank you to your team as well. And I look forward to seeing you in person in the near future. And thank you all for watching. Bye-bye.